The Allen Lund Company continues to support the owner-operators of OOIDA. Thank you for what you do, and stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
An OOIDA petition and a presidential executive order made CVSA act quickly to return English proficiency to the out-of-service criteria. Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine joined Scott Thompson to explain how it all went down. Tough times call for flexibility, for adjusting to conditions in order to survive. So how do you do that? For many, it means reinventing their trucking operation. I'll talk with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And finally, the English proficiency issue is not by any means something new, but Marty Ellis says recent activity on the issue has people talking. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. An OOIDA petition followed by a presidential executive order made the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance act quickly on a measure that returns English proficiency to the out-of-service criteria for truckers. CVSA's executive committee approving the change on Thursday during a meeting in New Orleans. Citing highway safety, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association petitioned the alliance in March to make non-compliance with the English proficiency regulation part of the out-of-service criteria, as it was from 2005 until 2015. That was followed this week by an executive order signed by President Trump that called for enforcement of the English proficiency regulation. One day later, CVSA's Driver and Traffic Committee voted to recommend that change, along with two others that shore up English proficiency requirements, and CVSA's Executive Committee approved all three on Thursday. This issue has always been about safety, OOIDA President Todd Spencer said in a video posted to social media.
Federal regulations have long required that drivers must be able to speak in English and communicate in English language as a basic safety requirement. CVSA used to enforce it, but in 2015, they backed off. Now drivers who can't meet that standard are still on the road with you and me and everyone else. Some motor carriers are taking advantage of this opportunity to recruit people that they can pay less. They'll gamble. This isn't about where someone's from. It's about safety, your safety, my safety, everyone's safety. If you can't communicate with law enforcement or read a road sign, you're creating a dangerous situation on the highway.
Following CVSA's decision, Spencer said that OOIDA is pleased to see CVSA taking these very common sense and practical steps to getting control of a situation that all highway users face. As for what happens next, CVSA's executive committee voted to put English proficiency back into the out-of-service criteria within 60 days, setting an implementation date of June 25th. Much more on this story later on in today's show. You only have a few more days to air your grievances about unnecessary regulations to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Last month, the DOT published a notice in the Federal Register asking the public to identify regulations that can be modified or repealed without hindering safety. That comment period, which ends on Monday, May 5th, has so far yielded about 600 comments, many of them suggesting the need for more flexibility in the hours of service regulations, others asking the Trump administration to stop a proposal that would mandate speed limiters on commercial motor vehicles. If you'd like to get your thoughts in, we've got a link in our story on landline.media. Two more states are warning residents about text scams looking to collect unpaid tolls. The Kansas Department of Transportation recently issued a notice about text messages that falsely claim to be from KDOT and demand payment for unpaid tolls. Residents in neighboring Oklahoma have been getting targeted with a similar pitch. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority said its IT security team has been working with other tolling agencies to identify websites generated by scammers to steal money and other sensitive information. As of April 23rd, the group had identified 264 scam websites. More than half have since been deactivated. Other states have put out similar warnings in recent months. So if you get a text related to unpaid tolls, don't click the link. And remember that tolling agencies typically send invoices through the mail, not via text message. The staged crash scheme known as Operation Sideswipe now includes additional murder charges. 2 men were indicted last week for plotting to kill Cornelius Garrison, who was cooperating with the FBI as a federal witness in the case before being murdered in the fall of 2020. The gunman in that case pleaded guilty earlier this year. Dozens of people have been charged in connection with Operation Sideswipe, which was aimed at defrauding insurance and trucking companies by staging crashes with semis. The Washington State DOT is testing out speed cameras on 2 major interstates. For now, the cameras on southbound I-5 in Skagit County and eastbound I-90 in Spokane County are only leading to warnings. Speeders get notices in the mail letting them know they got dinged and informing them how much a ticket at that speed would have cost them, and there's no effect on a person's driving record for now. Washington State DOT officials hope the $1 million pilot program changes driver behavior. There's a changing of the guard coming at the St. Christopher Truckers Relief Fund. Citing personal reasons, Donna Kennedy is stepping down from her role as executive director on May 5th. Her replacement will be announced the following day. Kennedy will remain with the organization as lead strategic advisor. St. Christopher helps over-the-road truck drivers and their families when an illness or injury takes them off the road. Since Kennedy joined the nonprofit 18 years ago, St. Christopher has provided more than $5 million in assistance to more than 4,000 truck drivers and their families. New details tonight about the American Truck Historical Society's National Convention and Truck Show. It'll run for 3 days starting June 5th in Madison, Wisconsin. Organizers say this year's event will showcase about 1,000 trucks and trailers of all shapes and sizes, alongside a vendor expo, educational sessions led by industry experts, and networking opportunities. The deadline to pre-register for the event is May 11th. On-site registration starts on June 3rd at the Alliant Energy Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Shell Rotella Super Rigs is bringing back the virtual People's Choice Award. Truck drivers who are not able to attend this year's event in Atlanta now have the chance to submit their truck for the honor. The deadline to do that is 5 p.m. Eastern on May 15th. Public voting opens the next day. Super Rigs 2025 runs for 3 days starting May 29th. In all, more than $25,000 in cash and prizes will be handed out. Winners in 20 different categories will be selected, and a dozen drivers will earn a spot in the 2026 Super Rigs calendar. And finally, a trucker in Texas had a bad day this week. Officials in Wise County say a truck carrying dimes turned over on U.S. Highway 287 early Tuesday morning. The good news here, nobody was seriously hurt. The bad, some 8 million dimes, roughly $800,000 spilled onto the highway. The highway was shut down for more than 12 hours while crews got to work, picking up all the loose change. That's Laneline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. If there's one thing truckers know, it's that people at most loading docks do not value their time. And the reason is simple. Those facilities don't have to pay for that time since truckers get paid by the mile. One way that can tackle at least part of that problem is if truckers were paid overtime after 40 hours. Now, a bill in Congress would do exactly that. That bill is the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers, or GOT Truckers Act, H.R. 1962 in the House and S. 893 in the Senate. Call your members of Congress to support the bill now at 202-224-3121 or write a letter using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Midwest Pride in Your Ride Truck Show. That takes place at the Tri-State Raceway in Earlville, Iowa. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. If someone tries to get you to violate the safety regulations, the first thing you need to do is document exactly what they did. Then you need to either call 1-888-DOT-SAFT or file a complaint online to the National Consumer Complaint Database. Next, Scott Thompson discusses English proficiency with Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. I'll get some advice on reinventing your trucking operations from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch. And Marty Ellis of the Spirit Truck joins the show to tell us what truckers are saying about the English proficiency issue. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
Big news out of New Orleans this week, and we're about to cover it in detail right here on Landline Now. The talk of the industry really in recent months has been English proficiency requirements, and this week, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance did something about it after being nudged in that direction by OOIDA and President Trump. Here with all the details are Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher, both of Landline Magazine. Jamie, Tyson, good to see you.
Hey, good to be here.
Pleasure being here.
We got a lot to get into here, and I do want to get into the nitty-gritty of how we got here in just a moment, because that's a story in and of itself. But let's start with the big change that's coming here. CVSA's Executive Committee on Thursday approving changes to the English proficiency requirements. Let's run through exactly what these changes are and what they're going to mean.
Okay, so what they did, the English proficiency standard, which is 391.11b2, has been on the books since 1936. This is not new information, okay? This regulation has been existing. What has been lacking since 2015 is enforcement of it. And so CVSA, being the keeper to the keys of the kingdom of the out-of-service criteria, had to put it back in order to get that roadside enforcement back in place. And so that was the big move, was getting, if you are in noncompliance of 391.11, you can be put out of service once this goes into effect.
Right now, as we speak, that is not the case.
Correct.
And it hasn't been the case for about 10 years now.
Correct.
Right.
And so the other two things they did, the Driver and Traffic Committee recommended to the Executive Committee, it's kind of like a mini Congress here. Anyway, they also want the Executive Committee to petition FMCSA to put the out-of-service order in the actual regulations. And that will put it on a very short list of 6 different regulations that actually have FMCSA mandated out-of-service orders. So other than that, it's usually just up to CVSA. So that's a big move. And the other one is just they want to see the state CDL licensing process harmonized. They want it consistent across the country, because right now it's a patchwork, and being able to give the written test in different languages other than English maybe creates a loophole that lets some individuals in who are just being set up to fail.
Right. Let's talk about how we got here. And Tyson, you and I spoke earlier in the week when CVSA started this process. And this process really has gone extremely quickly.
Lightning fast.
We're used to Congress and, seeing things kind of move along at a snail's pace. This thing really did get moving quickly. And it started last month, and we're going to get to President Trump's executive order here in just a moment. But let's start with OOIDA a month ago, really sounding the alarm on this issue and petitioning CVSA to do exactly what they just did. And Tyson, that really was the first domino in this process.
Yeah, so this was back in March 12th, OOIDA basically, put a petition to CVSA to address this issue that truckers have been raising on English proficiency. This is a month and a half before this executive order. So the way I kind of explain it is that OOIDA really set the pins up and then let the Trump administration kind of knock them down type of issue. But yeah, OOIDA was definitely on top of this, took in the issue with CVSA because, and this is the thing that I'm kind of learning for the first time, CVSA, not FMCSA, is responsible for the out-of-service violation requirements.
That's a huge misconception out there, I think. People don't know that.
Right.
A lot of people don't know.
And as Jamie pointed out, there's like that's very small handful of regulations. 6, right? Yeah, so 6 regulations that's in the books for FMCSA with out-of-service violations. Everything else is under the jurisdiction of CVSA. So a lot of people were barking up the wrong tree. OOIDA realized no, this is a CVSA thing, and then went straight to them first, and that kind of takes us to where we are with this executive order.
Yeah, we had that petition, and then the conversations continued, and then you mentioned it, and we mentioned it earlier, President Trump, the executive order this week. I think these two events, right, OOIDA's petition and President Trump's executive order, bringing this thing into the forefront, into the spotlight, really pushed this thing along this week. And CVSA, again, acted quickly here. I'd like to give a shout out to Doug Morris of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office, who was there in New Orleans and really put the pressure on these folks to do something about this.
Well, and it's so good to have somebody like Doug in your corner here at OOIDA, because with his history as the leadership of the Maryland Highway Patrol's commercial vehicle enforcement, he literally has been there, done that. So when you have a room full of cops who are wanting to do something and he's advocating for truckers as a former police officer, I mean, that is a very powerful message. That is a very strong voice in your room. Yeah. So OOIDA is fortunate to have him, and really, everybody who's listening, Doug did a tremendous job, and he got them to understand, because normally this process wouldn't have gone like this.
Well, yeah, and I think there was some feet dragging going on, and I wasn't in the room. Doug was, and he's kind of talked to us a little bit of feet dragging going on there, and he kept those feet to the fire and said, let's get something done here.
He really did. And, that between the 1-2 punch of the petition and the executive order is what gave him that ammo. Because the normal way they would have gone about this is to probably form a committee. Let's consider it in the fall.
Sure.
We'll do this and we'll do
let's
that.
Get a study group
and
going.
Then we'll come back in the spring. And what did y'all decide? And then we might pass it out of committee.
Sure.
That's
how it normally goes.
It's basically government at work. It's just an alliance level with an alliance, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. And let's talk, I think we should talk about why OOIDA has been so forceful on this issue and why they've pushed this issue, especially in recent weeks. And again, Jamie, you and I were at Matt's all over the place. Everybody was talking about English proficiency, non-domiciled CDLs. And OOIDA's stance on this issue is about safety. We have to make sure that the people who are on the road can communicate and understand road signs and, get into the other issues as well. Again, this all comes down to safety.
Yeah. There's been so many conversations around the building. Like you said at Matt's, there's just been so much out there. And as we move forward, there's going to be so much information. And some of it's going to be true, some of it's not. And that's why we have to keep focusing back on the fact that this is about highway safety. Not just our safety, but the individuals who may not be compliant with this regulation.
Yep.
I mean, it is about everybody. And, Todd Spencer put it wonderfully at one point. He said, this isn't about reciting an encyclopedia. It's about being able to communicate some basic instructions and handle a roadside inspection and read the signs that will keep you safe. And so I thought that was a really genius way to put it, because it's never been about where people are from.
Right.
It's 100% down to, are you equipped to react quickly, understanding what you're reading on those signs in an emergency situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about where we're heading now. We've talked about where we've been and kind of where we are right now. So we had CVSA on Thursday, the executive committee putting this into effect in 60 days, right, Tyson? So let's talk about what that looks like, when this goes into effect, what that's going to mean for people out on the road, I suppose, especially those who obviously don't speak English. But where are we going from here?
Start with the CVSA, their about face on the out-of-service violation. So, yeah, as you mentioned, June 25th. So until then, it's pretty much the same as it's always been for the past 10 years. But, yeah, I mean, as far as we know, starting June 25th, if an officer determines that a driver is not, proficient in English, they can be placed out of service. It's just simple as that. And that's good, because before it's just been like a slap on the wrist. And so there's
if they even wrote the violation.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now it really it puts some teeth into that regulation that has always been the thing. It just actually gives it some actual teeth. So it would disincentivize, carriers from hiring drivers who are not proficient in English. That's on the CVSA side. So going to the executive order, the U.S. Department of Transportation, they have 60 days to basically rescind this 2016, guidance, which really wasn't much of anything.
Not really.
This is more of a formality.
All it did was just double down on CVSA pulling it from the out-of-service criteria. So,
Right.
I mean, CVSA is actually the one that led the charge on that.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And so, they'll do that, and then they'll do some changes with the inspection procedure. But again, this is all just procedural stuff. The thing that we're going to be waiting for, that Jamie alluded to, was that CVSA is asking FMCSA to codify this out of service state to be number 7.
No, it'll be 6.
Or
I'm
it
sorry.
will be
Yeah.
number 6.
Yeah.
So we got 5. This will be number 6 in the official regulation, and so that's something that's definitely going to be keeping the eye on to see if they actually follow through with that. But that would be huge if they were able to do that.
And talk about that.
Well, I think the other thing that's really big, moving on, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, the state driver's licensing process. And, Tyson alluded to disincentivizing motor carriers from employing drivers who cannot comply with 391.11. And, let's be honest, that is a predatory hiring practice. If they cannot demonstrate basic English proficiency to get across the hurdle of 391.11, I guarantee you they did not understand the employment contract that a recruiter slapped down in front of them.
Yeah.
And this is doing nothing but artificially lowering wages. It's preying on people who don't know any better. It's really disgusting.
Rotten to its core.
And so, when we see that state driver's licensing, if whatever that looks like, and this will be an action that OOIDA members can get involved in again and really hold this accountable, because that's where the process should start. It should start with the driver's licensing process, the testing.
Well, and it's a patchwork, right? Because each state, we've got
yeah.
states doing it different. And I think that, and Todd Spencer had talked about this too. This is a nice first step, what we've seen out of CVSA this week. He would like to see, and OOIDA would like to see more done on this issue. And I think that's a perfect example of an area where improvements can be made. And I think it's pretty clear to everybody that this patchwork it's not working the way it should, or it's not working at all, I suppose.
Well, and I thought it was really interesting in the recommendation to the executive committee, the Driver and Traffic Committee actually in the discussion points said that by allowing them to pass tests in a language other than English,
right?
And these aren't their exact words, but basically we're setting them up to fail. And with with everything that just happened, they will fail either by getting an out-of-service order, or worse yet, put their lives in peril. I mean, that's what's going to happen. So this licensing process, it's basically a whole system of turn them loose and let's try and catch them. And so it's got to stop at the ground floor on this one.
Yeah, for sure. And again, this is I think a positive first step toward getting to that point. There is still a lot of work to be done here. But again, kudos where kudos are I guess, warranted here. A lot of work was done on this, and it was done in a very short amount of time. And it really does speak to the power, again, of speaking up and pushing people in the right direction.
Of Doug Morris.
I was going to say, Doug Morris gets so much credit here because he got this ball rolling a month and a half ago, and I don't think CVSA would have acted this fast without that petition already in place. So, big kudos to him.
It's just, these are the things, these are the issues that are heavy on everybody's hearts right now. We don't know what's going to happen with freight rates. There's a lot going on. So I think the collective trucking community needs to let yourself take a little bit of a victory lap here. This is a big win for truck drivers. This is a huge win for highway safety because nobody wants to get home more than truckers with millions of safe miles. So it's a big win, and we need to be ready to celebrate that, but we also need to be ready to go back to work and protect the progress that's been made.
Much more to come on this story. For details on everything that's happening and thorough reporting, you can check out Jamie and Tyson's work on our website, landline.media. Tyson, Jamie, we thank you for your time as always.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
And with that, we'll take a quick break, but hang tight. We're back right after this.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget Miss accuracy when your truck on a cat scale.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Landline Now, welcome back. No one listening right now needs us to tell them that times have been tough in trucking for a while. But tough times call for flexibility and agility, basically adjusting to the conditions in order to survive. So how do you do that? Here with some advice are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me here. It's an interesting topic.
Yes, it is, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
And this is apparently something you guys are getting quite a number of calls about, but that's not a surprise to me because of the way things are right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, our calls volumes, they definitely tend to reflect what's going on out there. You know, that's what keeps us kind of in the know. And right now, you know, people are wondering, you know, how can they stay in business? What do they have to do to stay in business, and should they stay in business? I mean, you know, that's a topic of a lot of calls right now. Cost of operations, the price of fuel, insurance, you know, is ever going up. So yeah, that's definitely the topic that folks want to talk about.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned in a note that went out, you know, you guys sent out this hot topics note, basically the top issues you're getting calls on. And a lot of people apparently were asking about, I'm going to use air quotes here, reinventing their operation. And I'm kind of curious, first of all, is there a pattern in terms of what kinds of trucking operations are looking or needing to reinvent themselves? Or to put it another way, what operations are most likely to be affected by these low rates and a slowing freight market?
Well, I mean, you know, when you look at it, obviously box freight. That's something that's most definitely affected first and foremost by the market. I mean, you know, you get in some of the niche areas, flatbed, you know, drop deck stuff. They're not as affected as much, but they do suffer. I mean, you know, because when box freight gets really slow and doesn't pay much, you know, people drop their box and pick up a flatbed, or, you know, try to find them a place, you know, reinvent themselves, find them a place where they can make some money. And it's just difficult throughout the industry right now.
I've also noticed something in reading a lot of news reports, and even in the mainstream media right now, there's some real concern about drayage operations really slowing down because with the tariffs, we're seeing a slowdown in freight coming into the ports.
Yeah, I mean, that has a role to play as far as that goes. But a lot of these companies, they're looking at, when you say reinventing themselves, let's kind of pick that apart a little bit. They're doing some layoffs here and there. Several companies are going out of business every week, and that's been going on for a few years now. I would tell you that some of them are filing for bankruptcy and reorganizing and downsizing as far as that goes, because it's affecting their bottom line. It's not. No one's really immune from this. Even your one truck operation, all the way to your mega carriers, it does affect them in some capacity. Some more than others. But I would tell you that there's not really, until the rates go back up, you know, it's really hard to fathom that more trucking companies aren't going to fall by the wayside.
Let's talk about this reinventing that people are trying to do here. And Aaron, you've got some good points there I do want to follow up on. But when we talk about reinventing, obviously we're talking about taking one kind of operation and going to another. Tom, you mentioned niche operations and a couple of examples. Are there other forms of kind of niche trucking that people can get into?
Yeah, there are. I mean, you know, and just switching up your wagon for one thing, you know, whether it's dry van to reefer, which, you know, a lot of the same stuff, but the reefer does give you a little bit more option. You know, to flatbed, intermodal, which I don't like, because what you said about intermodal, I really don't point anybody that direction right now, because it seems to be that the tariffs are really affecting that first and foremost, you know, because, I mean, that stuff, you know, 6 weeks ago, it was in some foreign place getting put on the box coming this way. Now with the tariffs, there's a lot less of that going on. You know, and then the prices of operation, the cost of operation. So you need to look at, what are your options? And I understand a lot of people out there, they say, well, you just need to not run. You need to just hang tight, hang home. Well, that's difficult for somebody that's got a truck payment, because you can't really make a truck payment working at Walmart or working at, McDonald's or whatever. Some people, there are those that get into some of these unfortunate situations, lease purchases. Now I tell them they're better off working at McDonald's, but than a lease purchase. But you can't make a truck payment and a trailer payment and an insurance payment unless you're running that truck. It's very difficult. But at the same time, to get out there and run that truck at a loss, there's no benefit there. I mean, that cost of operation. So if you can switch up, if you can go to something maybe local, maybe hauling an end dump or some other type of a trailer, something, you've got to look at how to stay viable, how to stay operational. And if that's your goal, then you just may need to reinvent or look at what options are there. Maybe look at options you hadn't previously looked at.
One thing I thought of, and I don't know if this is really a good idea, but it seems to me like hazmat, there's always something in that area to run. But am I just imagining that? I mean, is that really something that's a good option?
It's an option. The problem with doing hazmat is there's so much entailed with it. I mean, now granted, hazmat most generally pays more because there is so much more to it. But I discuss with people that call me up and want to talk about getting their hazmat authority. Do you have a customer that's going to run you pretty regular? Because if you don't,
it's not worth the insurance hike.
Yeah, that $5 million insurance that you got to pay and the hazmat protocol that's got to be in place, all that gets expensive. And so unless you got a customer that's going to run you pretty regular, hazmat, that's a niche that you just really got to look hard at.
Well, and that really depends on what class you haul, where your insurance payment falls, whether it's $2 million, $3 million, $4 or $5. But unless, like Tom's alluded to, if you don't have someone that's going to run you regularly, or if you're not committed to that, if you don't have something dedicated, it's not worth it, because you're gonna run at a loss at that too.
What about years ago? I talked with a trucker who's a member, and he talked about he had always hauled full truck full of freight from one shipper, but he was experimenting with doing less than truckload, kind of picking up a couple of different shipments into his trailer and then delivering them at a couple of different places. Is that something that can help someone weather the storm, or are there problems with it?
It can. If you can do that. If you read your contract or your rate cons, most of these brokers, they want exclusive use of trailer. And that's something that hangs you. And they put other little crap in the contracts too, like if they don't have exclusive use of trailer, they're not going to pay you for the load. They come up with all kinds of reasons to short pay you or down pay you, underpay you. So you really need to know what your contract with your broker says. Maybe renegotiate. Maybe tell these brokers, I'd love to see this. Hell no, I'm not going to do it that way. You don't get to dictate. But the problem with doing that is that puts you out there by yourself saying hell no, while there's a whole bunch of other people saying, oh, I'll do it a little cheaper. So it's you just got to be careful with that. But LTL, when I first got into the business back in the 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of LTL. That you built loads all the time. Brokers really they've kind of put the into it just with that exclusive use thing, and the fact that they just straight out won't pay you. I mean, then you're filing on a bond and dealing with all this type of stuff to get paid. And it gets ugly. So you got to kind of be careful with that.
And it also can cause liability issues if you contaminate a product or mix products, or you take the wrong stuff off at the first shipper and it's supposed to be at stop 2 or 3. I mean, it can get a little funky too. So you got to be up on your game on that. These places that don't allow you on the docks and things like that, then it's totally out of your control. You got to make sure that you are with it as well if your contract allows you to haul multiple loads of freight.
Yeah, and that's a good point that Aaron brings up. And with the clean trailer requirements that where you've got to document what you've hauled for your next haul, and so you can keep track of that, and you don't haul waste products and then haul some, say, beef or something like that. A lot of stuff to look at. I mean, it is possible, but you just really got to be careful and know what you're doing.
One of the things that's kind of discussed with this is people who talk about, I think you mentioned earlier, Tom, do I just need to shut down for a while? And you can do that permanently or you can do that temporarily. What sort of factors should guide someone in that decision?
You know, that's a difficult one that each individual, you know, especially a small operation, has to really look at what can they do. I mean, you can shut down your authority, revocate it. You know, you have to fill out some paperwork, have it notarized, and send it to the FMCSA. It's not difficult to do, but at that point, and then you can quit paying that $high insurance. You know, you just have some type of garage insurance on your truck, maybe. But then when you come back, if you decide to come back into business, it will show a revocation, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, on your authority. And as folks know, you know, I mean, I talk to people regularly that get their authority in place and can't get loads. Brokers, broker won't load me till I've had my authority for 6 months or a year or something. So then you fall into that. Now, there's no law that says they can't, but this is a broker-imposed situation. So you deal with some of that with that revocation on your authority. And if you've got somewhat reasonable, if you can use insurance and reasonable rates in the same sentence there, somewhat reasonable insurance, when you go to reestablish and come back in, your insurance rate is more than likely going to be higher.
Well, and there's a big difference between voluntary revocation and involuntary revocation. Involuntary revocation is, for example, if you don't pay your insurance, then they will revocate your authority. It gets put into dormant status until you can reactivate that and make the insurance payment. There's other ways to do it. Voluntary is where you specifically get it notarized, fill out the OCE-46 form, and then you're also going to want to fill out either the MCS 150 or the MCS 150B to inactivate that authority, and that's voluntary. And then, like Tom said, you notarize that and send it to FMCSA. Our permits and licensing department can also help with that here at OOIDA. They do a great job in that department of all things in regards to your authority. I would tell you that when you get back to where you want to reactivate, though, insurance will skyrocket. It's almost like you're treated as a brand new carrier again. All of that time that's accrued, either whether it's you've been in business 6 months or a year or 25 years, you're treated as a new driver. So insurance will skyrocket again, start over from scratch. Brokers that you used to use may not look at you the same, may not even use you now because they have certain rules established in there. So you got to kind of watch that. But that's kind of one of the pitfalls of it.
And let me say too, if your authority is revocated based on an out of service or an imminent hazard or, you know, some issues like that, there's more to it than to reinstate. You know, you've got to take care of those issues before they will let you reinstate. So just stuff to keep in mind.
Okay. Well, guys, we're running a little bit short on time here, but I want to thank you very much for all the information, and hopefully we help some folks out who are going through these hard times right now.
Absolutely. Hopefully it was helpful.
Thanks as always, Mark.
I've been talking with Aaron Lynch and Tom Crowley of OOIDA's Compliance Department, and we've been talking about some of the ways people are trying to cope with the tough times trucking's going through right now. And folks, again, if you do want to call permits and licensing or compliance here at OOIDA, the number is 816-229-5791. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Protect your diesel engine with Howe's Diesel Defender. Restore vital lubricity, eliminate injector deposits, and boost fuel economy by 5% or more. Power, performance, protection, all in one. Howe's Diesel Defender, available now.
With rising costs affecting everyone, switching to a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper can help you avoid expensive repairs and downtime. Save money and keep your truck running smooth with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. The regulations have long said that truckers must be able to read and speak the English language sufficiently enough to take care of the basic functions necessary for them to operate safely as a truck driver on American highways. However, that rule hasn't been enforced for years, but now that's changed. And Marty says it has people talking.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great. Hey, where are we finding you on this fine day?
We're at the Midwest Pride in Your Ride Truck Show at the Tri-State Raceway in Earlville, Iowa, right off of Highway 20. And we'll be here till Sunday morning. And so far, a really good show. And it's always just one of them friendly ones. They do a tractor pull and some truck drag races as well. And, you know, I keep saying that I need to get out and see how fast the Spirit will go.
Maybe not. That might be a problem. I don't know. Oh, my gosh. Well, it sounds like you're having a good time. I certainly hope you are. But I want to get right into some of the issues that are out there right now. And, Marty, I think number one on a lot of folks' mind is the executive order from the president requiring enforcement of the English proficiency regulation, basically that people can understand English well enough to read signs, to communicate with enforcement, so on and so forth. But I know that there's a lot of emotion out there in the trucking community about this. What are you hearing from truck drivers?
Yeah, there really is a lot of people that are, you know, kind of worked up over this. And, you know, the sad thing is, I mean, it's been on the regulation. Okay, I mean, it's a regulation already. It's not like President Trump, you know, reinvented the wheel and come up with something new. He's just basically saying, look, we have to enforce it. All this has to do is safety, and somehow, some way, we have to get people to understand that that's all this is about. Will that person be able to read that sign that says, you know, truck runaway ramp and understand what the heck that means? Look at a sign that says, you know, low clearance for a bridge, you know, things like that. And construction signs, you know, trucks left lane only, these things that so many times, you know, when you're driving down your road and you're wondering, does this person really know what that sign meant back there? And, I of course, I don't speak very good English myself, but there are times when you're driving along and you see a sign and it's like, hold it, what did I just say? And I understand English and I can read English. And if I'm thinking that, how is that sign serving a person that doesn't speak English well or not at all, depending on the circumstance? How are they understanding what that is if me going by at 70 mile an hour can't understand it, and you want to turn around and go back and read it again? Of course you can't. So I think that the English proficiency, you know, as far as enforcing it, I'm all for it. We need to know that people can understand enough to read the signs, communicate. So where if an emergency comes up, we know that the person's going to act or react correctly. But we just have to also understand that maybe some of our states and even the federal government can do a little bit better job with some signage. Okay, do we have to have, you know, little caricatures for everything? No. But make sure that when you are testing a sign, you go by at the speed limit, okay, and don't, have one, and I don't know how to do it, but have people where they're not expecting to be reading that sign. So all of a sudden it's a sign that's new, you don't know it's coming, and then all of a sudden it's there. You need to be able to read that far enough away in that time frame, or you're doing the sign wrong. So, help all of us out here on the road with better signage. And of course, it's keep in mind that it's just strictly about safety, and that we all need to work toward that goal for everybody out here on the road.
Marty, I've always said what language someone speaks in their home, what language they use when they're chatting with their friends, what they use at the grocery store, or when they're talking to their minister or priest, none of that's my business. Freedom of speech means they can speak however they want there. But, you gave a couple of examples. The ones I always go to are, if you see a sign that says bridge out, I want to know that you understood that. Or if you've got an inspector who's under your truck and he says, don't move the truck, you need to understand what that person just said to you. And it really is just a matter of basic safety. And it's not without precedent, because even in other countries, pilots in airplanes are required to speak English, not because English is just the perfect language or anything, but just so there is one common language they all can communicate in for safety purposes.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, we just have a little bit of time left here, and I'm wondering, Marty, if we could just chat for a little bit about where you're headed next after the truck show.
Yeah, we're going to be heading back up into Wisconsin, in Tomah, Wisconsin. We'll be at the Quick Trip. It's I-94 and exit 143, and that's the Quick Trip with a K. And I like these stops. They have a nice selection of food and grocery items in the store, and they usually have a decent deal on fuel. And, they're building more and more parking at some of their locations, so that helps all of us drivers out here. And that'll be the 5th through the 7th that I will be there. And then after that, the 9th through the 11th, we're going to be at the Quick Star with a K, and that is in Davenport, Iowa. That's I-280, exit number 6. So should be a good time, both of those stops. And then we're going to make our way back to headquarters again. It seems like this is getting to be a fairly often thing for me. So we're going to come back in the office.
Having you here.
Yeah. And we're going to, have some time with the board members, which I always appreciate, because, some of the time they see things in a different way than I do. And of course, visiting with folks that work in the office, it's the same way. It's good to have those other perspectives, whether we're talking about speed limiters or English proficiency or anything in trucking especially. And it really does help to get that different mindset, because I always know that mine isn't always 100% on cue, but we try.
Well, fantastic. Well, Marty, we sure appreciate you talking with us. Be safe out there. We'll see you soon. And any final words before you ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, just remember, drivers, be kind to one another and give that driver next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at our website, landlinenow.com. You can also find the Spirit's complete schedule at the OOIDA website, OOIDA.com. Just go to the main menu at the upper left corner of the page, and under Membership, click on OOIDA on Tour. There you can find the next month or so of where the Spirit is headed. Again, that's at the association's website, OOIDA.com. Meanwhile, if you have questions about regulations, compliance, getting your own authority, or anything else involved in the trucking industry, but you're not where the Spirit has stopped, call OOIDA. We have someone who can help. Just dial the main number, 816-229-5791. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.